So tonight we have the unstoppable growth of secular student organizations with Lyz Liddell, August Brunsman, and Dan Pemberton. Lyz is the Director of Campus Organizing for the Secular Student Alliance. August is the Executive Director of the SSA, and Dan is the Regional Campus Organizer for the Southwest region. They're here with us tonight to explain how secular student organizations are growing and why we should be excited about it. So please join me in welcoming Lyz, August, and Dan.
Well, while they're getting the AV set up, just let me say thank you to Scott and to Lynn and everybody who helped pull this together. We are super happy to be here, and wow, are you guys really well organized. We go around the country and speak to a lot of local groups, and very, very impressed with the situation you have here. So this is very exciting.
Mic check. All right, great. As August said, thank you so much for having us here tonight. It's been absolutely wonderful for us Flatlanders to come out here to your beautiful hilly Bay Area. It's gorgeous, your weather is wonderful, and we've really enjoyed being here so far. So tonight we are going to talk to you about the unstoppable growth of secular student organizations. But before we do that, we're going to do a couple of introductions. That's August. He's going to talk about himself.
Sure. So, as was mentioned before, I'm the Executive Director of the Secular Student Alliance, which allegedly means I'm in charge, which is fairly terrifying to me, but so far things seem to be working out well enough. I've been with the organization since 2000, back when we got founded. I was involved with a student group at Ohio State, Students for Free Thought at the Ohio State University back long, long ago. And do we have an alum over there? Or, go Bucks, all right, very good. And yeah, and so I've been doing this for the better part of 15 years now. It's been very exciting, and I would not be anywhere near as successful without Lyz.
I'm Lyz Liddell. I'm the Director of Campus Organizing at the National Secular Student Alliance. What that means is that I am in charge of the staff team that makes all of our student programming happen. So all of our campus organizers on the ground, all of the group running guides, all of the resources, all of the projects, all of the days are all, really I'm just an over-glorified train director. I just sort of point a lot and make things happen. So I've been involved with the Secular Student Alliance since 2005. I began as a volunteer, a newsletter editor, actually. So if you'd like to get started on your path to greatness, volunteer with ACSJ because they need an article editor. Hey, what? And I was brought on as a full-time staffer in 2008 as our one and only campus organizing staffer, and we have since built up the organization to 14 staff, and I manage most of them.
True story. And Dan Pemberton
is in the back. Dan, stand up for us for just a second. Dan is a student at CSU Chico. He's also our regional campus organizer for the Southwest region, which encompasses California, Nevada, and Arizona. So he only has like one of the most populated parts of the western half of the United States, and he's doing it while he's trying to finish his degree. So Dan is a superhero, but he's also finishing his dinner. So he's going to come up and join us for the Q&A, and August and I are going to yak your ears off for a couple minutes in the meantime.
True story.
So August, what is the Secular Student Alliance?
Sure, the Secular Student Alliance is an umbrella organization for atheist, agnostic, and humanist students at high schools, pardon me, and colleges all over the country. And there is a whole lot going on with the SSA. And Lyz and I have tried in the past to make talks that kind of like run through every single thing, and it just turns into like a death march of tedium.
It's more like a fire hose.
Yeah, indeed. And so what we have here is we're going to give you a broad overview, and then we're going to go into Q&A because Lyz and I and Dan live this every day, so we've got lots and lots of knowledge we can share with you, and we can focus on the parts that are kind of the most exciting.
So if we were to put it into really, really big picture terms, August, what is the SSA?
So if we pull together sort of two big things, we got secular identity and secular values. So let me take a second to kind of unpack those a little bit. So we want to work with students who are interested in, who think it is important that their worldview doesn't involve the supernatural. And there's a whole lot of labels that we use for that. So, you know, atheist, agnostic, humanist, freethinker, Pastafarian, all kinds of stuff like that. We've got spiritual but not religious up there. We have I would limit that to the spiritual but not religious folks who do not embrace the supernatural, but we're definitely finding there are plenty of people who are completely naturalistic in their worldview, but decide that label is valuable to them usually because they're excited about kind of that perspective of awe and reason. My father happens to be one of these people, and he's like, don't let the religionists take that away from us. So that's kind of one part of it. And then the other part is the secular values part. So the way we cash that out is people who hold values centered around the well-being of the current and future world. And kind of the values that we talk about are values that I'm going to guess are pretty popular in this room. So, compassion, curiosity, valuing diversity, education, equality, stuff like that. So the combination of those two things together, building secular identity and spreading secular values. That is the sort of big picture, overarching structure of how to think about the Secular Student Alliance. And if you talk to somebody about what the Secular Student Alliance does, those are the things you can tell them. They help students who are building secular identity and spreading secular values. And Lyz, how do we do those things?
How do we do these things, August? Well, as it turns out, we've got about 15 years of organizational experience trying to make this happen. So the Secular Student Alliance empowers secular students to proudly express their identity, build welcoming communities, promote secular values, and set a course for lifelong activism. We'll unpack that a little bit one step at a time. So first, let's talk about proudly expressing their identity. How many people can remember the first time they found out that they knew another atheist? I see a couple hands, a couple of nods. Pretty awesome feeling, right? One of the things that, and sort of the parallel question, how awesome is it to sit in this room and to be able to say, like, yeah, I'm an atheist, and that's fantastic. So that's the kind of experience we want to make sure our students have available to them. And we do that in a lot of ways. One of our flagship events is National Ask an Atheist Day. We've been running this for about 6 years now, or 2016, as we head into this academic year. Will be the 6th National Ask an Atheist Day. And this is the 4th Thursday in April when student groups all over the country get out on their quad, on their oval, on their student union, on their lawn, whatever they want to call it, and they put up a table that says, we're atheists, ask us anything. And sometimes they give away free candy as prize. And the whole point of this event is to get out there and get up in front of people and say, here we are, we're atheists, we're excited about it, we want you to know more about us, come and find out. Our arms are wide open. We also do work building welcoming communities. How many people like being a part of the atheist community of San Jose? You have a phenomenal group here. I've been stalking your group on Meetup and Facebook for a while in preparation for this event, and this is exactly the kind of community that we are seeing and helping our students provide at college campuses across the country. These welcoming communities where we can be ourselves, where we can be with like-minded people and talk about the things that are important to us. The third part of our mission is promoting secular values. So we have the identity part. We're atheists, we're proud of that, we're going to express that, we're going to have a community around it, but we're also going to take action. We're going to get involved in service projects. This is actually a student group that went down to New Orleans shortly after Hurricane Katrina and participated in home rebuilding for their spring break trip. Interestingly enough, as a joint activity with the Christian group on their campus. They all got on you put a bunch of atheists and Christians on a bus together for 18 hours. And it turns out you build a lot of houses. So service projects are one activity area we see a lot of action in. The other is political advocacy. Issues around separation of church and state, or other political issues that center around human rights, or areas where religion kind of gets in the way and makes things messy in ways that it shouldn't. So a big issue that our students have been involved in is marriage equality. Thankfully, they don't have to do that anymore. The last piece here is setting a course for lifelong activism. It is fantastic that we can give students these experiences and these opportunities while they are on campus, but what we don't want to see is to see them disappear when they step off of that campus. We want them to graduate, to walk across that stage, and carry those values and that identity and that action for the rest of their lives, so that they're not just secular students, but that they're secular students for life. This is Hemant Mehta. He writes the blog Friendly Atheist. He's one of our alumni. He's been out there in the real world living his values for 12, 15 years now, something like that.
Somewhere up there, maybe about 10, I think.
10?
Yeah.
He is, in this photo, speaking at an event called Skepticon. It's a Midwestern conference for atheists and skeptics that was originally a student conference. As its leaders graduated, they took the event with them. It is in its 7th year.
That sounds right.
And it is one of the biggest secular, skeptic, atheist conferences in the Midwest. It's absolutely free to people to attend. So where are we going with this? I'll go ahead and take this away.
So those are sort of all a broad overview of like how we get there, and the place that we're trying to go and kind of what we envision for the future is where secular students all over the country live meaningful and fulfilling lives, they thrive as valued members of society and provide visionary leadership committed to humanistic ideals and critical inquiry. And
what does that look like?
And that, well, I don't know, it kind of looks like the future, right? So, like, I think in some ways, this can sound sort of far off. There are clearly certain situations where some secular students are already lucky enough to be able to do this. They're in places where the climate is such that it is a relatively easy path to do this. But in a lot of circumstances, that is still not the case yet. For instance, the U.S. Congress. If you go and poll the U.S. Congress about who is a non-believer, right now, nobody. You had Pete Stark for a while, but then he didn't win, and now officially there is no one. Although I have heard rumors that there may be 20 or 30 who are not believers, but are not willing to say so because of kind of the political cost of being an unbeliever in our society. So we want to change that. We want to change society so that everybody who grows up as a humanist or freethinker or whatever it is and is trying to spread secular values is just as likely to be able to represent their fellow Americans as they kind of go forth and participate in the world. So that's what we'd really like to see.
And that's what we're doing as an organization. And so right now, we're doing that on 270 campuses across the United States. Looks about like that. We can break it down to just California, and you can see we've got a pretty healthy collection of groups hanging around here.
And that is just NorCal.
That's just that's right, that's only like half of your state. Your state's really long. Did you know that? So if we look at just the Bay Area, we've got some really powerful groups here in this, just in this specific part of, right here in your backyards, actually. As we get into the Q&A, we're going to bring Dan up. Dan is our expert on these groups. He'll be able to tell you all about them and how you can get in touch with them and what they would love to have from you. But can I say, wow, we've got some good stuff going on. So how does this all work? We're going to do a little bit of a friendly competition with one of our friendly competition here. Let's talk about CREW, the Campus Crusade for Christ, and the Secular Student Alliance. CREW runs on an annual budget of about $500 million every year.
$500 million for those of you, paying attention.
Keeping track at home. That gives them the ability to have about 3 full-time paid staffers for every campus group they support. Can you imagine? The Secular Student Alliance, on the other hand, runs on a budget of just about $1 million every year. We have about 20 groups to every full-time staffer on our team right now. So what this means is that on one hand, we've got a lot of work to do. The religious organizations have a big leg up on us. On the other hand, we are tremendously efficient. We put together 270 campus groups with a staff of 14, and we do it on a shoestring of a budget. That's pretty incredible. We have great staff, we have excellent programs, we've learned how to do this very well and very efficiently. But we can't do it alone.
Yeah, so if you are excited about building secular identity and you are excited about spreading secular values, then we want to recruit you. To quote a spectacular guy, whenever I'm in Northern California, I love thinking about Harvey Milk. I think he was a really spectacular leader, and we want to recruit you. We are 90% funded by non-students. So it turns out students in general do not have a whole ton of money. And so in order to provide all the things that we provide to them, and we can talk all about the different resources you might be interested in during the Q&A, Q&A, we need your help. And thank you so much to the atheist community of San Jose for giving us the door there. That's very, very much appreciated, and it will go to very, very good work. If you are interested in becoming an individual member of the Secular Student Alliance, Lyz and I have a Square reader. We would be delighted to take your membership after the talk, or if you want to go to secularstudents.org. We would not be able to do the work we do without support of non-students. So if seeing the spread of secular identity and the spread of secular values on campuses is something that you value, please support us. In addition to that, we need you to spread the word. Maybe you would not be shocked, perhaps. How often it is the case that when Lyz and I tell somebody new what we do, they will give us the reaction of, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that. That's so amazing. I wish I had known about that when I was in school. So, you know, we do an okay job of spreading the word, but we need your help to spread the word. So telling your friends, telling your family, hey, there's this great student group, the Secular Student Alliance. They help students build secular identity and spread secular values. You should check them out at secularstudents.org.
Are we on Facebook?
We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. It is /secular students for all those things. So twitter.com/secular students, youtube.com/secular students. Yeah.
It's a little bit like Finding Waldo, except way easier.
It's like the inverse of that.
So with your help, we can be, not just August and I up here, and not just the students we work with, but everyone in this room, the entire secular community is the Secular Student Alliance, and we are delighted to be a part of that with you.
Yeah, so thank you very much, and with that, it's time for questions, I think?
I think we're good for questions, so thank you very much.
And Dan, come on up.
We're going to get Mr. Pemberton up here. He's our local expert.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing.
Hi, I'm Fred Johnson. I think we've met before. I have a question about the scope of your work in high schools. Both, you know, sort of quantitatively, how's that going, and qualitatively, how's it different from colleges, and how are you approaching that?
As the director of campus organizing, that's a good question for me to answer. High school groups are about 10% of our overall group network. That is of the groups that actually exist. They're actually a much larger percent of the requests we get to start new groups. And qualitatively, the difference is we like to say that organizing secular students on college campus is a little bit like organizing at a bus stop. People are always coming and going. Organizing at a high school is a little bit like trying to organize at a grocery store checkout line. It's insane, the amount of turnover that these students are up against. They're also working in smaller communities with a lot tighter restrictions, and quite frankly, the students don't have as many liberties. They are dependent on their parents for rides. They don't have money, or they usually don't have their own bank accounts. Even less money if it's possible. And so it's much harder to organize at a high school group, and the challenge there is that the sustainability is significantly lower.
So I have two quick questions. One is, can you give us an idea of what the local schools are, like San Jose State, or what schools? And then can you give us some statistics on how the total student population with interest in this has risen over the past decade or so?
Okay, would we be able to get the slide of the map?
Yeah, I get the map up here.
So I'm hearing two questions in that. The first is regarding local SSA affiliates, local groups, and then the second one was the increase in interest in the student populations and doing something like this. Now, okay. A very quick note about this map of these groups. This is generated off of a Google map that I think is, in fact, missing about half the groups.
Whoa!
It's a bug we know about. We're working on it. We've been trying to promote it as a feature, but we're still talking about it. So we are here. The C closest to San Jose is the San Jose State University. Jasmine Holst is the president and doing an excellent job. They are always working on new events. They are coming down to the upcoming Southwest Secular Student Conference happening at the end of this month in Southern California. There is another group just down the road that is forming right now at Westmont High School in Campbell. There is another group starting in Santa Clara University. There is one in Palo Alto, one down there in Santa Cruz. And this, I think the one south of Mountain View on here is a glitch. I think that is supposed to be the Stanford group. There is a high school in San Mateo that just last year hosted Greta Christina for a coming out atheist event. And the leader of that group, Natalie Lewis, did a spectacular job. I was there for it. It was really quite incredible. There is the San Jose State University group that is in through its second set of leaders on this incarnation of it. Virginia Ray just handed the reins down to Tyler Woodward, who San Francisco State. And they are also coming down to the Southwest Secular Student Conference, and so I'm really eager to see what projects they're going to take on after that. The Bassett Berkeley group is in the middle of a leadership transition now, so I'm not sure who the new president's going to be there, but they have an unusually large amount of transfer students that are coming in. And just north of that is the Santa Rosa Junior College, and a lot of those students are pretty steadily going to both Berkeley and UC Davis, which is going to be just east up past Concord. And then the high school in Pleasanton is the Foothill High School SSA, and they just formed with Aya Keller as president, and that is a really high energy group. They have been taking on absolutely any activity, any project that they can possibly get their hands on. They are a very ambitious group, and in fact, when somehow they saw on Facebook that I was going to be meeting with groups in the area, and they went out of their way to take a field trip to come meet with me before they had even received their group starting packet. They're really a go-getting team. We have... and the UC Santa Cruz group. And if you've ever been to the UC Santa Cruz campus, you'll know that it's not in Santa Cruz. It is rather secluded, and they kind of play by their own rules there. And one of the things about Santa Cruz is that it isn't religious as it is religious about pseudoscience. And so this group is kind of taken on really the sort of resident skeptic community. And they are constantly being kind of hit with homeopathy evangelists and tarot card readers. I mean, the stories, if someone else had told me these stories, if I didn't see them firsthand, I would have thought they were exaggerating. There's no deficiency of really goofy stories that come out of their tabling experiences. And just off of this map, going east past Davis, is the Sacramento City College. And the Sacramento City College SSA is how I got involved with the Secular Student Alliance, and it is also one of the longest, highest functioning junior college groups in the country. Don Button is the advisor, and they are in the middle of doing elections right now for a new president because their former president just graduated or transferred to Sacramento State. But the Sacramento City College hosts regular speaker events. They did a very large week of events last year in 2014 where it was the Sex Positive Week. And for 4 days straight, about 10 or 12 hours a day, nonstop speaker events, workshops, film screenings, entire quad-sized tabling events, all about sex education, about relationships, about non-traditional relationships, about gender identity and gender expression. And this was a joint effort between their group, the Sac City College Feminists, and the Queer Straight Alliance on campus. And fast forward a few months after that event, and school policy started to change as a direct result from that event. The single biggest one is that all single-stall restrooms are now being refitted to be gender neutral, and all new buildings on campus are required to have gender neutral restrooms fitted from the beginning. And that has many different implications for the lives of students on that campus. And that model of event has been in the conversations that I've had with several other students for more ambitious projects. The most recent one has been with Diana Kingsbury out of the Santa Rosa Junior College on a restorative justice initiative project, which may still be a couple years down the line, but it is nonetheless from the Sacramento City College Group's model for very large and efficient, ambitious events. And the last one, the group that I was personally involved with after the Sacramento City College Group, is the Sacramento State SSA. And Ty Albert just took on, became president of that group, and they have a lot of really interesting local speaker events that they're probably going to do about one a month, hosting local professors and a lot of really great local voices that have kind of been on the sidelines for a while. And they are basically leading the Northern California expedition down to the Southwest Secular Student Conference, and they're taking the Black Nonbelievers of Sacramento. They're taking a lot of the other student groups in the area down with them. And I think most of the other groups that I've talked about are very far out of the neighborhood, but that's pretty much what we have all around the Bay Area and the surrounding areas.
I'm going to take on the second half of your question, which was a little bit about how the demographics have changed, because that's present. There's been a lot of polls about the rise of the nuns, particularly among young people, and don't get discouraged. We have plenty of time for Q&A. One of the things that keeps coming out of that is that this demographic under 30 keeps rising in non-religiosity, and that's been interesting. It's kind of exciting. What it is not is a victory. The students the young people who are identifying in this non-religious category are not necessarily identifying as atheists, agnostics, humanists, and so forth. And quite often they actually still have theistic or supernatural beliefs. The challenge is that there's very little research being done into that demographic group. Pew and the other big studies are sort of like, yep, there's the nuns, 30% block of the population, great, they're homogenous, we don't care, apparently. And so we started to sort of dig into that more to figure out what the demographic breakdowns are. And so what we've come out of that is that right now, it's about 1 in 10 students on college campuses are probably non-theistic, naturalistic worldviews, and fall under the umbrella that we would call secular. They may not have that as an important part of their identity, and so part of our work is to reach them and say, hey, you know, you see the world the same way we do. Come see why this is important and why you being open about your identity makes a difference. So it definitely has increased over time. But there's a lot of work to do in understanding it better, and it's opening up some really interesting doors and really interesting opportunities. We've got a lot of growth still ahead of us.
Short question. When you're out winning souls for Darwin, what do you feel like is the most effective thing that you do that is successful?
I think the most effective thing we do, honestly, is simply being visible. I think that act of going out there and labeling yourself and saying, hey, I'm secular and I am participating in this campus just as fully as everybody else. I think that is the #1 most effective thing. There are all sorts of amazing activities that our student groups do. Liz talked about Ask an Atheist. They also, lots of our groups celebrate Darwin Day, and some of our groups do much edgier things. Some of our groups do things like on Good Friday. Some of our groups have an event where they hand out condoms and they call that Have a Good Friday Night. And it's a way to like kind of be a little bit edgy and a little bit engaged with what's going on, but also to address a very serious issue, frankly, that access to reproductive healthcare tools is actually hurting millions and millions of people around the world and in the United States, and kind of taking that on and raising awareness about it is I think a really important thing, and watching people that have a secular identity go out and enact secular values. I don't think there's any better tool than leading by example to sort of show why the work we're doing is really important.
just a little bit of a build on that, we have found that there's a need for a wide spectrum of events. So in addition to the edgy events that August is talking about, we actually do a lot of what we sort of term warm fuzzies. So we actually do work with interfaith coalitions, we work with progressive coalitions, and we work in sort of the more diplomatic and cooperative events as well, sort of, you know, putting the, to borrow again sort of from the LGBT movement, the firebrands and the diplomats. That sometimes you kind of got to punch people in the face, but sometimes you need to give them a hug afterwards.
And actually, I'm really glad Liz made that clarification, because I think it's sort of like 10% edgy events and 90% like more diplomatic events. I don't know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Hi. Regarding that earlier question about high schools and also political activism, are you aware of an organization called JSA?
JSA?
JSA stands for the Junior State of America and the Junior Statesman Foundation, which happens to be located here in San Mateo.
Okay.
They also had their high school. I'll read you their mission statement. It's very short. Mission of them are to strengthen American democracy by educating and preparing high school students for lifelong involvement and responsible leadership in a democratic society.
Huh.
And they had a program called Fighting Apathy, which I think from a liberal perspective, that was the biggest problem we had in the midterm elections, is apathy by young voters.
Sure.
So maybe if anybody wants to make contact with JSA and see if there's a way of working together.
We do a lot of cooperative work with national and in some cases more regional organizations. That seems like a good partner for us to look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll look into it.
Hi. I did a career in journalism, and I'm always interested in how people get themselves in the press. And if you're, a lot of times you're just talking to the same people when you're on the social media, and it doesn't take a whole lot of ingenuity to turn over the page and find something that's very interesting about your organization that would sell to a general newspaper. And I just wondered, newspapers and television shows, your daily news, and I just wonder if you're really onto that. And I even ask the same of all of these groups. Anybody who needs publicity needs to think harder than what they're doing. Thank you.
You want to address our communication strategy?
So yeah, we have a communications staffer and a communications contractor, and we send out press releases, and we work with our student groups to send out press releases about the events that they're doing. So yeah, and we actually have on the website a whole bunch of resources about, like, here's how to write a press release, here's how to write a letter to the editor, here's how to do an interview, and things like that. So there's a whole host of activities we're doing to try to engage that, and we've been covered in the New York Times and Huffington Post and Chronicle of Higher Education and Wall Street Journal, and so I agree with you, and yeah, that's absolutely a critical part of what we're doing. Every day. And the added challenge that we've definitely been noticing, we're doing our very best to adapt to, we're doing okay, is that back in 2008, 2012, like, atheism was very exciting and new and big. But now it's getting to be just a little bit more like, oh yeah, we've heard about that. We know there's an atheist group, around here. Like, it's great they're there, but like, they're maybe not newsworthy. So we kind of have to keep pushing that envelope and coming up with new ideas and doing new things. Yeah.
So I imagine you get pushback from both parents and organizations at the different schools and campuses. I wonder if you've seen any change over the 15 years as far as the flavor of that goes.
Huh.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I can speak sort of from the years that I've been
I
organizing.
can think of some things too, actually, but go ahead.
It used to be, we used to have to prepare students across the board for how to convince your school that this was an okay thing for them to let you do. And in the majority of our schools now, when we work with students to start new groups, it is a streamlined process. It is almost rubber stamping at the university level. Very rarely at a public school are we looking at university level resistance to our groups. We still get it at Christian schools when we try to have an SSA at a Christian school. We have about 12 affiliates at religious schools right now, and some of them are delighted to have us, and some of them are not. And every once in a while we'll run into a college in, you know, like, I don't know, like 1,200 student schools in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, who decide that they want to break the law. And we work with legal partners to take the schools to task when that happens. High schools, again, are a different beast. The high schools, but even there, it has largely, by and large, improved. It used to be that every high school was a fight, both against the administration and the faculty and the community. More and more often, that resistance is at least less overt. We've had a couple of high prominent stories. A couple of years ago, we had a very high profile story in the USA Today about a administration that was illegally blocking a high school group. And that got the attention of a lot of educators and helped them realize, oh, hey, look, if we break the law, people will sue us. And maybe we shouldn't do that. And sometimes they still like to get sued, but it's becoming less and less common.
That reminded me of so back in 2002, we had our annual conference in Chicago, and we got housing arranged first at a hostel in downtown Chicago, and the organizers there were like, oh, you know, if you still need event space, DePaul, Catholic college, across the street has all this event space, and the prices are pretty reasonable, especially during the summer. Here's their number, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, we reached out to them and tried to get that set up, and at first it seemed fine, and then we got this email that was like, we're really sorry, but higher up said that because you're an atheist organization, we're not going to rent to you. And that obviously was a bummer. A few years later, though, via their interfaith community on campus, actually, there was an SSA group that got started there. So, and was very much sort of celebrated by the administration as kind of like adding to the diversity. And as far as Catholic colleges go, DePaul is definitely like way more on the liberal side of things. We've had really, we've been in touch with students at Duquesne, at University of Dayton, at Notre Dame, who have really wanted to start groups. And the universities have been very, very staunchly opposed to that there. So it is not as though the Catholics are acting as a group, which actually was a little surprising to me, but in some places we've really made some really excellent progress.
Hi. So I've been a member for quite a few years. Yay.
Thank you.
And every year when I send my membership money off, I've always occurred to me to think, well, okay, so I'm giving money, which is good, but what else can I do? So so I'm wondering if you have a way of connecting local non-students who are members with local student groups. I happen to be the current proud owner of 2 university-age sons, so I know they're not always that excited about having help from people who are older, but I don't know if that's done or if there's something that will allow us to connect with them. Like at San Jose State, for example, because I happen to live 2 blocks from campus.
There are so many things that someone like you could do, and it does change from area to area and campus to campus, and maybe who the leaders are. But I am a big advocate of mentorships. I had one when I graduated high school and I was in college, and I benefited tremendously from that. I am also a really big advocate of instilling skills into young people, and like, for example, this Southwest Secular Student Conference that's coming up at the end of the month, it is entirely student produced, and it meant that people showed up and said, I have no idea how to write press releases or how to communicate with the media, or I don't know how to be a videographer, and I connected them with people who could train them, or we worked together to train them. And that was huge, because I had plenty of off-campus people who wanted to help, but I already know they know how to do that. I was interested in young people who didn't, and I'm also interested in seeing what off-campus groups and on-campus groups can do in collaboration. For example, in early 2013, when I was at Sacramento State, my group hosted our very first speaker event ever with another off-campus group who was going to use that as their inaugural event. So neither of us had ever done anything before. And that became one of the single best collaborative efforts I've ever participated in because of all of these really new, wonderful relationships that have come out. And if anyone knows Julie Wedge out of the humanist community of Silicon Valley, she is the product of that event. And I'm very serious about that. There are a whole host of really amazing things that can happen when two groups who have never done anything together work to produce something like that. There are a whole host of possibilities.
Another really, really awesome thing you can do is, because you are not coming and going through the bus stop, as it were, is just check in on the group and keep an eye on them. And if you see, get on their Facebook page and just check in every now and then. Hey, how's it going? Got any cool events coming up? And if you see that, if you start to see that there aren't, if you start to see, wow, it's been a couple of weeks since anybody's posted something here, or I thought you were having meetings and now I'm not seeing anything, just checking in can help identify problems, and even if you're not an expert on how to help groups recover from some of the problems they can have, you can help inform us. You can help Dan find out about things that we just might miss because we're working at a 1 to 20 ratio right now.
And also I want to say that it can be a little weird to just randomly walk into a group, although I think you should feel free to, honestly, and that happens all the time and it's usually perfectly welcome. But if you want, definitely tonight, get Dan's card, and I'm sure Dan can introduce you via email to the group leaders there and kind of make that a little bit smoother. I know that there are several off-campus groups that kind of informally adopt a campus group. The Humanist Community of Central Ohio sometimes, will buy pizza for the first meeting of the group at Ohio State every fall. Just little things like that kind of building up the relationship and checking in. It does take some sustained effort in as much as those campus leaders are going to turn over, so you need to kind of make sure you know the new faces as they come in. But that work is important, and be in touch with us and tell us the ideas you have for getting involved too, because I think that is also an area for growth.
What can you tell us about the gender balance of each? Well, not each one, but in general, the Secular Student Alliance in comparison to the gender balance or demographics of the particular schools?
Schools in general, a little off the cuff, tend to be a little bit heavier in women in enrollment than men. It's something like, I don't know, like 52-48 or 55-45. It's very slightly skewed towards women. Our groups are about 65% men and 35% women, and they've been there for actually several years. The secular community at large, the last time I looked at the secular census, was more like 75-25.
Sounds plausible.
And so we're a little ahead of the curve of the movement. We definitely have some opportunity on, compared to the university demographics, there's a little less opportunity actually if you go back to the Pew demographics of who is non-religious, right, and who's identifying as with naturalistic worldviews. The women tend to hang on to religious communities and religious labels more than men do. So there's sort of fewer women demographically. So there may be more women on campus, but there's fewer women atheists on campus. But we're doing a good job of reaching them. Find a sociologist. I'm not sure. There have been some articles written about it. It's something that people have noticed and have started to look into, but that's not an area where I can speak with expertise.
Okay, a couple more questions.
This may be a little off to the side, but do you have any interaction with or any support for students who are like questioning or sort of in between, or, I mean, I know they may come up at the events and there may be some short interchange, but, sorry, thank you. Is there anything more than that?
We encourage our groups to be welcoming communities, and part of that is we encourage them to be welcoming to students who are not necessarily yet, as it were, secular themselves. We have 4 minimum standards of affiliation that we hold our groups to, and one of those is non-discriminatory, and our non-discrimination clause includes a religious clause. So our groups actually cannot ban religious members. And part of that is so that they continue to provide those spaces where questioning students, or even people who are religious but just don't know anything about atheists, can come and learn and come and build community.
I'd further add that that a lot of our groups do participate in interfaith events where they are interacting with folks that have a very solid sort of faith-based identity, or maybe are in somewhere along a spectrum of doubt. But those interactions are common. And it's not just about, kind of like, although, we do literally have them go out on the quad and put up signs sometimes that say Ask an Atheist, like there's other ways in which we're presenting ourselves that I think, can be sort of more approachable than when we are, out there with our atheist banner held high.
A really quick note from what I do with a lot of groups is when I have a comfortable enough relationship with the leaders of a particular group, one of the activities that we'll sometimes do is I'll workshop with them running one of their own meetings and ask themselves to run the meeting and ask how it looks like from other members' perspectives if someone was brand new, and what are some of the strong points and what are some of the weaker points for it being a welcoming environment. Now, each group is very different and they're a whole different set of circumstances, but one of the questions that I sort of end with is this group safe enough for someone who presently outwardly identifies as an atheist to change their mind? Is this comfortable enough for an atheist to say?
For someone who doesn't or does?
Is this group comfortable enough for an atheist to say, I might be a theist? And that is sort of the dichotomy that I kind of have them work with, is and kind of let that be one of the ideas to play with in making it a welcoming group. And that could be at a meeting, or it could be at an Ask an Atheist table, or another activity.
I see what you're saying.
Okay, last question.
Thank you, Scott.
But we still have answers. This poor gentleman up here has been trying to ask a question all day and he can't get the microphone.
Could you describe your outreach to students of color, please?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked. We did a strategic plan that we just released details of in March of this year, and we have 5 organizational strategies, and one of those, it's number 4, is looking to our diversity and our inclusivity. And so we have partnerships with Black Nonbelievers of America. We have a diversity council that we have used to build up relationships with people who are representative of and or experts in different demographic areas. So not just people of color, but also women, different faith backgrounds, different student statuses, so international students, for example, and non-traditional students. And we are using those recommendations to both measure our demographics and we're embarking in systems to then build strategies for improving them. We have some pieces in place. We have a speakers bureau of about 130 speakers, and we do make a point to recruit speakers of color for that bureau. We have diversity measures in place for our speakers at our annual conference to make sure that we are representing people of color and women and other minority identities in those events. We have a handful of resources for our students to reach out to other demographic groups, I guess the non-dominant white demographic groups. We have a lot of work to do. It's something we're very aware of and something we are very, very earnestly working on. So I'm not going to pretend we're perfect at all. We definitely have work to do, but it's something that's very much on our radar. And our students are on fire about it. They really, really want to make this better. So that's the time is right, and so we're working on it.
Okay, I have to pick my words very carefully with this because I could talk for a whole hour on that very topic because there's so many wonderful things happening. A practical example of what's happening right now is a year ago in LA was the Moving Social Justice Conference, and anybody who was there has almost the exact same story, that it is a fixed point in the movement on the West Coast. It was a life-changing event, and it is something that anyone who went there cannot stop talking about. And I have only just recently been able to get connected with a few remaining people at that event in the last week, and they still have the same feelings. And I am getting as many of those collaborators, whether it's from Black Nonbelievers or Black Skeptics of LA, Atheist Unidos, a few other groups that have a much higher membership membership and population of ethnic minorities to participate in panels and workshops and talks at the Southwest Secular Student Conference. We have 2 people who an hour before this event from Sacramento who emailed me and said they were paying their own way to fly out and speak at the Southwest Conference from Black non-believers of Sacramento. Wow. Black Lives Matter of San Francisco and Black Lives Matter of LA are both coming. We have several leaders from Black Skeptics of LA, as well as leaders of past and present from Atheist Unidos in LA who are going to be collaborating. And how do we do that? The short version is well, I do that by not speaking to a group. I speak to people one-on-one, and that's a shit ton of coffee to have, but it works, and it works well.
Thanks for hearing me out. I'm assuming, the bug notwithstanding, that there are still a lot of college campuses that haven't got an alliance yet.
Yep.
Is there anything particular about either UC system or Cal State system that is a major impediment to having an alliance on campus?
We have, I'm going to let Dan speak to more detail about specific schools. I wish they were. One thing that I can notice from sort of the national level is that actually organizing in this part of California is harder than organizing in places like Missouri, Texas, Mississippi, the Southeast, the Midwest. And part of that is because the college campuses here tend to be more progressive and more accepting of secular students already. And so there's less societal pressure to form a shelter from religion. We call this the Brown phenomenon. We first noticed it at Brown University. And so that's something that we see. It's nothing inherent in the systems. It's more about sort of the cultural atmosphere. But I'll let Dan speak to the individual campuses.
The most concise answer I can give to that is once you get 40 miles outside of a major city, you're in the South. Over here, you see we're
no offense to the South.
Going east on 205 where it hits 5, that's Manteca. January 14th, 300 people protested outside of Matt McCormick's stock talk on the Salem witch trials. I had seen that talk a half dozen times. I almost didn't go. I only went because I was trying to get new people to come with me. We show up. I thought we showed up to the wrong event. And they take that very seriously. A very simple letter to the editor or a very simple 3x5 ad in a paper made 2 churches who in the world of Christian doctrine, they could not have been more different, suddenly get real friendly. And they put together a really savvy protest outside the event, and in fact it was the opening event to the Stanislaus Humanists group that had just formed there, and they thought this is what every day was going to be like. And I said, no, but you have excellent publicity, and their group has been thriving ever since. But going up and down the 5, as soon as you hit Turlock and Stockton, that's where it starts getting tough. Now, Stockton is UOP. That is a really progressive campus. You've got a really healthy Muslim Student Association group there. I've ridden in the back of plenty of trunks from the MSA out of Sac State going down there. Oh, yeah, that's how I do interfaith work. And you go down the 5 and the 99 all the way down to Bakersfield, there's nothing. We've got group starting packet requests coming out of there, but nothing ever forms. You've got plenty of off-campus groups going down there, but the biggest question I get out of them is why are there no groups forming on these campuses when they have the same legal protection as the groups in the Bay Area? And although I've heard stories, the first time I ever saw this happen was in Stanislaus. So we got a group starting packet request out of there, and it was tougher than nails getting students to come to their meetings, even though they were probably more well promoted than any other group in the state. And the pressure wasn't coming from the administration, wasn't really coming from the school at all for the group not to form. It was coming from friends and family. And a lot of young people were concerned about how their friends and family were going to react when they showed up there. And that was one of the key events that kind of led to a talk I think some people here have seen me give on herding cats and teaching science, all of these different complex socioeconomic factors that lead even young people to reject certain very elemental forms of science and history. But that's a really great example of different more isolated, whether in this case farming communities that are really away from the same kind of accepted, more communal ideas that are in bigger cities that still keep even young people from having, I think, a truly secular education in life.
Okay, so I'm going to take the opportunity to take the last question here. I know that Lyz and August and Dan are going to be around afterwards. You can come up and barrage them with questions, as I know we always do afterwards. But I'm going to ask the last question, which is, as a professional in the Silicon Valley, what can I do to support the SSA?
You can become a member at secularstudents.org, and you can tell people about us. Tell your friends when it comes up over coffee and they say, "Oh yeah, you know, I'm not really religious." You can say, "Have you heard of the Secular Student Alliance? They are doing great work, and you should check them out."
Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much.